I'm going to show you how to make a color block monoprint using a Gelli plate, Utrecht fluid acrylics, a brayer, and a stencil. The first thing we need is the right paper. We're using a Reeves BFK printmaking paper, and I've trimmed it down to 13 by 15 to give it enough space around the print for framing. Let's take a look at the Gelli plate that we're going to be using. This is a 12 by 14 size Gelli plate, and I'm going to set it right down on the paper where I want my print to go. Then I take a pencil and I lightly mark the corners on each corner of the Gelli plate so that I have 4 corners marked off before we even begin. To get started, I'm going to get my clean paper over off to the side so it's ready when I need to grab it. And I'm going to put my clean plate down on my work surface. We're going to be using Utrecht Artist Fluid Acrylics for their viscosity. I want to make a two-toned color print, and I'd like my top color to be slightly different than the color on the bottom. So I'm going to mix a custom color, and I'll use the palette knife to combine these colors. You want to make sure to mix the paint until it's fully incorporated so no color streaks are left. And just keep mixing the paint into itself. You don't need any water. Load up the paint on your brayer by rolling in both directions. Get that paint nice and loaded on there. Take it straight over to your gel plate and imagine that there's a line running across the center of your Gelli plate printing block. That's going to help remind us where we want our second color to start. So we're doing a color block print, and I'm just rolling the acrylics directly onto the Gelli plate somewhat quickly so that I can make sure that my paint stays working and open. Okay, now that you have one color down, let's make another custom color. It's a little darker than the one that we just made. Give it some variety, less yellow and more blue. Again, make sure you use enough paint and mix that around on your palette. Load your second color onto your brayer. Make sure that brayer is clean. Just roll it on a paper towel, clean it with water. Apply that color to the bottom half of your gel plate. Make sure you're rolling in both directions, get even coverage. Make sure to use plenty of paint. Okay, let's do our first print. So we're going to line up the corner of the gel plate with the paper. Let that fall. Transfer the paint by rubbing with moderate pressure on the back of your paper. Make sure you cover all areas from top to bottom and side to side. Make sure you get the corners. You really want to make sure to try to get as solid and even of a print as possible. Let's just take a little peek and see if this is transferring. Oh, that turned out gorgeous. So there's your first layer for your color block monoprint. We have a gorgeous texture and great coverage. I have some really nice stencils by Stencil 1, and this one is in the shape of a Monstera leaf. And you get a positive and negative from the stencil. So I'm going to use the negative to do my actual color placement. But to do my planning, I'm going to use the positive. We want to think about, before we apply the paint for our print, where we want that print to land. So I can use the positive stencil to think about where I want to place the Monstera leaf on the background. I'm going to print 2 Monsteras that are slightly different colors. So one will go here and one will be raised slightly above that. So for the one that's going closer to the bottom, if I want that to land right there, I'm going to take my stencil and I want to make sure that I mirror that, because whatever I print is going to show up the opposite on my paper as it does on the gel plate. So remember that the gel plate is the same size as the background that you printed. Make sure that your stencil is really sticking to that gel plate. The gel plate surface isn't necessarily sticky to the touch, but it really likes to hold on to things. We're going to apply color directly to the surface and pull our stencil away. I want this color to be lighter, and it's going to go in the background. The reason I want the lighter color on the bottom is so that the darker color I place on top will show up nicely. I like to use plenty of white when I'm using a gel plate because it extends my color without diluting it, and it makes it a little more muted, which can help the color to show up on your surface. So adding white makes your colors a little more opaque. All the custom colors that we're making are very similar, but we're choosing to add different amounts of each color to get different shades. Load your new color onto a clean brayer and roll it in both directions. Then, working directly over top of your stencil, roll that color on. Make sure you're only rolling the color in the stencil area and not on the borders. I like to use a liberal amount of paint to make sure I'm getting all the corners and details. Now we're going to take the stencil off of the jelly plate so that it's just the isolated positive image. Then re-register your paper. Make sure to rub the back of the paper and get that paint transferred. Let's let this layer dry before printing a second layer. We're gonna make this one a little darker, so I'm using this phthalo green yellow. Of course, I'm adding white, help it show up better, and aquamarine. Let's place our stencil on the surface, and remember to place it higher and more to the left on your gel plate so that it shows up in a different space on the print. Make sure your stencil is sticking to the gel plate. Now let's load up the brayer with our new color. Apply that directly onto the stencil, just like we did with the first one. Try and work quickly, but don't rush. Just keep that paint open until you've got all the paint rolled on. Make sure you get those edges. Okay, remove your stencil carefully. And if you get any unwanted paint, you can wipe that away gently with a paper towel or a Q-tip, a little bit of water. Re-register your paper, just like we did before, by lining up the corners. Be sure to thoroughly clean your gel plate with warm soap and water or Windex and store it flat. Here's your final artwork. Be sure to pick out a great frame and hang this artwork up in your home studio, office, or personal space.